I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of my new apartment, tracing the skyline with my eyes while my phone buzzed insistently on the marble countertop behind me. The city lights shimmered like tiny stars below, but all I could think about was the message I had sent hours ago. Can't wait for you all to see my new place. Housewarming tomorrow. Love, Sophie. I smoothed the silk of my blouse over my shoulders and sighed, the fabric cool against my skin, but it did little to calm the storm inside me. This was supposed to be a celebration, a milestone I'd worked toward for years, yet an uneasy weight pressed against my chest. My hands flexed nervously around the coffee mug, the warmth seeping into my fingers. I tried to focus on the apartment itself, the oak floors, the light filtering through sheer curtains, the artwork I'd carefully chosen to reflect pieces of my journey. But the emptiness of it all, even before anyone arrived, felt like a whisper of the past I'd tried so hard to outrun. And then my phone buzzed again. Another reminder. Another nudge from reality. I stared at the screen, imagining the text responses I expected. Busy. Maybe next time. Congrats, Sophie. Vague and dismissive. My chest tightened, a familiar blend of hurt and ironic pride swirling in me. This was the moment I had dreamed of, but somehow I feared no one I loved would share it with me. I turned back to the window and let the city glow swallow my reflection, forcing myself to inhale deeply. Tonight, I told myself, would be mine. I remember the night I decided I couldn't stay. I was 22, and my tiny studio apartment smelled faintly of old coffee and paint thinner from the canvases I couldn't yet sell. My parents' voices still echoed in my ears from the fight earlier that evening. "You're making a huge mistake, Sophie," my mother had said, arms crossed, her voice tight with worry, or maybe frustration at me personally. "You think you can just leave everything and build something on your own? You'll fail." Her words had felt like nails pressing into my chest. My father hadn't spoken much, just shook his head and sighed, his disappointment heavier than any argument. I wanted to argue, to cry, to plead for understanding, but I knew it would do no good. They couldn't see the version of me that existed inside, the one who could fight her way through doubt, rejection, and fear. I ran my hands along the old wooden table where my grandmother used to sit, tracing the grooves as if they carried some kind of wisdom. She had always believed in me, even when the world didn't. Before she passed, she had given me a small, delicate silver locket. "Keep it close," she had said, "and remember, the world only limits you if you let it." I clutched it that night, feeling its cold reassurance against my palm, and made a silent vow. I would leave, and I would build something they couldn't ignore. Not out of spite, but because I owed myself the chance to prove I could. The door slammed behind me as I walked out, and the hallway lights of my childhood home blurred with tears I refused to shed. I didn't know how I would survive or what awaited me, but for the first time, the fear of staying felt heavier than the fear of leaving. Every step down that familiar street was a step toward the life I had only dared to imagine, a life where I could define my worth on my own terms. That night, I carried nothing but the locket and the faint scent of my grandmother's perfume in my memory. It was all I needed to remind myself that even in the face of rejection, I was capable of more than anyone had ever allowed me to see. That small, silver piece of courage became the seed of independence, and with it, the journey I now reflected on from my apartment window began. The first few months after leaving home were brutal. My tiny studio was barely furnished, the walls echoing with silence except for the occasional scratch of my pen on paper or the hum of my laptop. I worked long hours freelancing, taking every odd job I could find, barely scraping by, and every night, I fell into bed exhausted, wondering if I'd made the right choice. But the locket around my neck glimmered softly in the lamplight, a constant reminder that I was capable of more than they ever believed. Then I met Lauren Michaels, a seasoned interior designer who had built her own empire from scratch. She spotted me struggling to pitch a project at a local gallery, and after a brief conversation, she said something I'll never forget. "Sophie, talent like yours doesn't belong in small rooms. You need to learn how to expand it, step by step, not waiting for permission." She became my mentor, guiding me through the industry, teaching me how to negotiate contracts, manage clients, and assert myself without fear. The nights were long, the work unrelenting. I juggled multiple projects, taught myself new skills, and fought self-doubt constantly. There were moments when I wanted to quit, when bills piled up, when a client rejected my ideas, when I heard my parents' voices in my head, reminding me I wasn't enough. But every small win kept me moving forward. My first big client came after 3 months, an independent boutique seeking a bold redesign. The joy of seeing their space transformed and the pride in my invoice made me feel alive in a way I hadn't imagined. Then came the first profitable sale. I remember holding the contract in trembling hands, my heart hammering with disbelief. For the first time, I felt the exhilarating mixture of fear and triumph. Fear of standing on my own, triumph in proving myself capable. The first step toward real independence was mine. Slowly, project by project, I built a small but growing reputation. Through it all, I kept my family in the dark. My Instagram posts were carefully curated, showing modest glimpses of my life, never revealing the true scale of my success. Every time I saw my mother's messages asking about my work, I smiled politely but never mentioned the deals, the net worth slowly accruing, or the apartment I was saving for. This secrecy wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my story on my own terms. As the years passed, I saw myself transform. From the young woman terrified of being alone, I became someone who could create beauty, command respect, and stand resilient in the face of doubt. Each late night, each small victory, and every lesson from Lauren reinforced the truth I had discovered early on. Independence wasn't just survival, it was self-respect in its purest, most powerful form. And now, standing in my apartment, every piece of furniture, every brushstroke on the walls, whispered the story of that journey, a story my family had yet to witness firsthand. The doorbell rang just as the golden hour light spilled across the hardwood floors. My heart skipped, not with nervousness, but with anticipation. I had spent months planning this evening, arranging every detail, from the soft jazz playing in the background to the centerpiece of fresh lilies on the dining table. And now, the moment of truth had arrived. I opened the door to find my parents standing there, looking exactly as I remembered, my mother's brow furrowed in polite concern, my father's hands stuffed into his pockets as if bracing for judgment. My younger brother, Alex, shuffled behind them, glancing around as if expecting a modest apartment filled with compromise, not the space before him. I smiled, the kind of smile that had nothing to do with apology or guilt, only calm confidence. "Welcome," I said, stepping aside to let them in. The air was warm with candlelight, the soft aroma of freshly baked bread mingling with the subtle scent of lavender from the diffuser in the corner. They froze. The walls bore contemporary paintings I'd collected from local artists I'd mentored. A sleek, marble-topped bar gleamed to the left. Bookshelves were lined with first editions and journals, all meticulously arranged. Even the furniture, soft leather couches, polished oak tables, vibrant rugs, spoke of deliberate care and taste. I let them take it all in, giving them time to process. My mother's lips parted slightly, eyes wide. My father's jaw tightened, betraying the faintest flicker of pride mixed with surprise. Alex's mouth opened, but no words came. Finally, I led them to the balcony, the city lights twinkling below. I leaned against the railing, feeling the cool metal under my fingertips, and let the silence stretch just long enough before I spoke. "I wanted tonight to be about sharing my home with you, but I think it's also about sharing the truth. The truth is, I've been building a life you didn't see. I own this apartment. I've grown my business from nothing. The projects you never knew about, the clients you never heard of, they're real. I'm not struggling anymore. I'm thriving." My mother's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes glistening. My father's shoulders slumped, a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension settling over him. Alex finally found his voice murmuring, "Sophie, this is incredible." I smiled, letting them feel the weight of my words. It's taken years of hard work, late nights, and more than a few failures. And I kept it quiet because I wanted it to be mine first. I didn't need your approval. I needed to prove to myself that I could do it. The silence that followed was heavy, but not awkward. It was filled with recognition, realization, and perhaps a little guilt. I could see it in their eyes. They had expected to find a girl still fumbling through life, not the woman standing before them, poised, powerful, and unshakable. I turned back to the apartment, my gaze sweeping over every corner. The books, the art, the life I had meticulously built. And for the first time, I allowed a tiny, private thrill to bloom in my chest. I had done this on my own. They could finally see me, really see me, and nothing could take that away. The moment had arrived when I realized the power dynamic had shifted. For years, they had wielded judgment and expectation over me. Now, I held the keys to my life, my space, and even the tone of our relationship. I could feel it in the way they lingered in the living room, uncertain, trying to gauge how to act around this new version of their daughter. I took a deep breath, letting the locket around my neck warm against my skin, a silent reminder of the promise I'd made to myself so long ago. I love you all, I began, voice calm but deliberate. But love doesn't mean enabling old patterns. I want you to be part of my life, but on different terms. My mother swallowed hard, her eyes wary but attentive. What terms? She asked softly. I straightened, feeling the quiet authority settle into my posture. Mom, I need you to respect my decisions without judgment. I need you to stop comparing me to others or questioning my choices. You've done it for years. I understand it came from concern, but it's time to trust that I know my own path. Turning to my father, I continued, Dad, I want you to be involved, but you can't dismiss my achievements or minimize my work. Encouragement matters, not criticism. And Alex, I looked at my brother, who shifted uncomfortably. I want you to chase your own dreams without expecting me to bail you out. Independence is the greatest gift you can give yourself. I could see the weight of my words settling over them. Their expressions carried a mix of shame, understanding, and reflection, subtle, but undeniable. Each of you has a choice tonight, I said, letting my words sink in. You can choose to grow with me, to support and encourage each other, or you can step back and watch from a distance. I won't shrink myself to make anyone else comfortable, but I will support anyone willing to change for themselves, not for me. There was a quiet moment, the kind where the hum of the city outside fills the silence. I let it linger because they needed to feel the gravity of what I was offering, not just a housewarming, but a chance to heal old wounds and rebuild respect. I added gently, this isn't about punishment. It's about growth. Mom, Dad, Alex, I want you to recognize your patterns, take responsibility, and strive for something better. Only then can we truly share our lives together. By the time the evening ended, I could see subtle shifts. My mother's shoulders had relaxed, a tentative smile playing on her lips. My father's jaw, once rigid with pride and stubbornness, softened. And Alex, well, I caught him sketching quietly in a corner later, a long-forgotten passion reigniting. It was a reminder that power doesn't have to be harsh. Authority can coexist with compassion, boundaries can coexist with love, and independence can coexist with connection. Tonight, I wasn't just showing them my apartment. I was showing them what it looked like to stand unapologetically in your own truth. The days and weeks that followed were quiet, but transformative. My parents began to show subtle changes. Mom called more often, not with criticism but with curiosity about my work. Dad asked questions about my projects, listening without judgment. Alex, too, started pursuing his art again, sketching in the evenings and sharing his progress with a hesitant pride that made me smile. It wasn't immediate perfection. Old habits lingered, but the shift was real. Change, I realized, came not from force, but from gentle insistence and clear boundaries. And as I watched them begin to grow, I felt a rare sense of peace settle into my chest. I spent one quiet morning on my balcony, the city stretching endlessly below. Sunlight danced across the locket around my neck, the same one my grandmother had given me all those years ago. I traced its surface, remembering her words, The world only limits you if you let it. I smiled softly. That little piece of silver had carried me through the darkest moments, through fear, doubt, and loneliness. And now, it reminded me that I had emerged not just successful, but whole. Looking around my apartment, I saw the story of my journey in every corner. The artwork from emerging artists, the shelves filled with books that had taught me lessons no one else could, the little personal touches that made this space unmistakably mine. This home wasn't just an apartment. It was a testament to resilience, vision, and self-respect. And as I reflected on everything, the hurt, the loneliness, the victories, and the growth, I realized something profound. The people we love may not always meet us where we are, but that doesn't diminish our journey. Sometimes, you have to show them your light from a distance before they can even imagine it. I stood, straightened my shoulders, and let the city hum beneath me. I was proud, I was independent, and I was unshakable. The life I had built, the boundaries I had set, and the love I was willing to give on new terms, all of it was mine, and no one could take it away. And in that moment, I knew exactly who I had become. I am not the girl I was. I am the woman I chose to be.